everyone, it's Shari Carroll here for SimonsSaysStamp.com, and I have a DIY project that I hope that you're going to enjoy. I have forever loved the look of Mercury glass, and I've seen some tutorials on Pinterest, and I thought I'd give it a try using the Tim Holtz Idea-ology vintage jars. Mercury glass is really an interesting look for a jar, so I have done a really distressed look because I'm going to put a candle on the inside, or actually a battery type candle. So I still want to show some of the glass the candle will be seen. So I'll be using the Tim Holtz Idea-ology jars, and these are perfect for the battery tea light candles. And I'm going to be using the Krylon Looking Glass spray, and this is a really shiny spray. I'm not going to spray this on camera. I didn't want to get my camera in the middle of everything, so I'll do that outside later. Another thing that you're going to want to use is a mixture of half water and half vinegar. And then I have some hemostats with a paper towel that's kind of folded up that I can use to move the paint around. When using this spray, I would use this in a really well ventilated area because it is very smelly. If you need to, go ahead and use a mask. I've just sprayed my jar with 3 quick bursts of the paint, and you can let it set for about a minute. Now I'm going to go ahead and spray the inside with my vinegar mixture, and I'll hold this up in a second, and you can kind of see where you see the bubbles form just from the outside. So at this point, everything is wet on the inside. And what I want to do next is to get my paper towel wet. And the reason why I'm using hemostats is so that I can go ahead and reach inside without touching the back side. So I want to go ahead and add some of that vinegar mixture to that towel, and now I'm just going to touch the sides, and it kind of moves the paint around. So it's kind of cracking it and allowing me to move this around. I'm going for a really distressed look because of the tea light candles that I'm putting inside. I do want to be able to see through the glass. And I'd have to say that my layer of paint on the inside is quite light. You could definitely go back and do heavier layers if you wanted to. I couldn't decide what to do with the lid, so I decided to paint mine with black gesso. You could use the Prima or the Ranger black gesso, and either one will work really fine. So I just have a flat brush. I'm going to go ahead and start painting onto the lid. I ended up doing about 3 layers of the paint, letting it dry in between, and it covered it really well. So I went ahead and went around the sides and just completely covered the whole outside of the lid. While those are drying, I'm going to go ahead and start decorating. So I have some Clearly for Art from Wendy Vecchi, and this is a film that you can use with your alcohol inks, and then you can maneuver them or manipulate it once they're heated. So I'm going to use some lettuce color alcohol ink, also Pool, Aqua, and the Pearl Metallic. And I have cut down one of my little felt pieces to go onto my mini blending tool. I have cut my Clearly for Art film using the poinsettia die, and I'm going to start off by using some of the pool color. I want to have kind of a blue poinsettia instead of a red one, so I thought it would be really fun. And then the pearl metallic will give me a nice kind of a milky metallic look to it. So I'm just going to add these onto that felt piece. I have shaken up my pearl metallic. It does have a shaking ball in there, so you want to make sure that you shake that up really well. I've mixed the pool and the aqua onto the felt just to give me a little bit of variance of color. And once I'm ready, I can go ahead and just pounce this right onto that film. I'll go back over so that it doesn't look like it's just little dots of color, and then everything will start blending in. You can kind of see how that metallic is starting to look. It looks like it's a little bit white, but right now it is pretty dotted. So all you need to do is just go back over it and just fill in, and this will give you a really nice variegated look. Once I have my flowers covered, I'll go ahead and clean up my craft sheet with some alcohol and change out my felt so I can do my leaf. For the leaf that's going to sit behind the flower, I'm just using the lettuce alcohol ink along with the pearl, and I'm using the larger of the poinsettia, and I'll just be doing 3 of these. So I'm just going to go ahead and pounce it just over the 3, and then I'll cut these apart when I'm done. To decorate my jar, I have tied some of the metallic trimmings from Tim Holtz around the jar, and I just tied that into a simple bow. And this was the top silver one. It's one of the thinner ones. And so I've tied that into a simple bow, but I wanted to show you how you can do a really quick double bow, especially when you're going to hide it behind a flower. So I've just created another loop with that extra trimmings, and I'm just adding a little bit of my hot glue just in between, and I'm just going to go ahead and set this down and press it down in place. When doing this, I want to make sure that I don't get in the way of that lid. I want to make sure that I can still open and close it really easily. So I am going to make my second loop, but first I want to take my finger and kind of run my thumbnail onto that ribbon. That will take away any of the creases. There is metal in here, it feels like, because it does hold its shape really well. So once I've kind of figured out my second loop, I'll go ahead and add a little bit more glue from my hot glue gun, and then I can go ahead and just press that down right where I want it and make sure that I have it straightened out. Then I can kind of fluff it up as I need to. When doing a bow that's going to sit behind the flower, I want to make sure that it's large enough so the loops will show. I have also created another triple bow by looping some of that silver thread back and forth, and then I've tied around the center with another strand of thread and just kind of did a simple tie. I'll go ahead and place some more hot glue in the center, and then I can go ahead and press this down and hold that in place just for a second. Hot glue is really great to work with a project like this because it's more flexible and it's also quick drying. So here's a look at my flower. You can see the dimension that I have. To put it together, I've punched holes in each of the pieces using my crocodile, and then I used a brad to feed that through. So I'll go ahead and put a good amount of the hot glue in the center of the bow, and I'm making sure that I don't get it onto that lid. And once I decide on the direction that I'm going to have my flower, I'll go ahead and press that down and hold that down to make sure that it really gets stuck onto that bow really well. And while you're holding that down to let that glue cool down, you can go ahead and start fluffing up your bow. So this one's about done. I am going to go ahead and separate some of those threads so those look a little bit more spread out. And what's really nice about this is if I decide to change my mind later and change the whole decoration, I can go ahead and clip off that ribbon and then make something new. I've decorated a couple other jars using different types of decoration. So I've used a metal wreath and also attached on one of the jingle bell brads and a couple of the gems, and I just clipped off the backs of those brads with some wire cutters. Then I glued those down with hot glue. I've also used some of the linen ribbon and also created some pine cones using the Tim Holtz pine cone die and some Desert Storm cardstock. I've colored the green with some peeled paint ink using my blending tool. I also used a little bit of rock candy glitter in the pine cone and around on the leaves so it has a little bit of winter shine. I did 3 jars in total because I couldn't decide what to do. So this last one is super fun and it uses a lot of the Idea-ology charms and tokens. I also have glue all over my fingers. I wrapped the top with bead chain, then I started adding in all the snowflakes and charms. I also had my husband drill a hole so I could add a faucet, and then I put a snowflake and a jingle bell on the top. So here's another look back at my finished jars, the first one being the poinsettia with the clearly for art using the alcohol inks in non-traditional colors. The more natural looking jar with the paper pine cones and juniper branches, also with the metal wreath onto the front of the jar with the jingle bell and a few gems. And finally with the ball chain and the snowflake charms and tokens, plus a faucet adornment attached to the top of the jar lid. Remember, when altering the jars, they are no longer food safe, and also make sure you use your spray paint in a really well ventilated area. I hope I've given you some inspiration on how to do mercury glass using the Tim Holtz mini mason jars. And as always, thanks for watching.